okay, you just little bit improve your perspective and the way you live, but you still have to go through the same grind that everybody else does.
Indra's net is anyway working. You just whilst
exactly.
You're there, whilst you're
absolutely
in the thing, you do your contribution and move on.
Absolutely. Right? This Indra's net is a huge thing, which is like this whole network of intelligence which is governing the universe. Because they don't talk, they only talk about self, and the world is mithya. They don't talk about Ishvara. So therefore they have to feel that, oh, they have to assume this responsibility of saving the mankind. We have this Indra's net. So you only do your part. You don't assume what the entire responsibility of fixing the world. Okay, so therefore, inherently, with this whole thing of the tree is based on ignorance. Okay, and as long as there is ignorance, there is what you, if the glass or bottle space starts thinking that I'm only this space and starts living one's life and not knowing that there is only one grand space, the starting point of the what relating to the world is going to be what? Highly skewed, not just slightly skewed. Where is the comparison between if I talk about my self-identity, to think I am only confined to this bottle, right, the bottle space, or to know that there is what? There is one undivided space which pervades everything. Imagine how skewed that starting point is. With that skewed starting point, and you can't stand the limitation, so you keep on engaging in the world to what? For your fulfillment. And while you're engaging, sometimes you are in alignment with dharma and all, sometimes you're not. You get carried away by your emotions, you get carried away by your perception, your senses. So many things, they just take you without your knowing it. So that means the results come for everything. So when the results come, they are all up and down, because the starting point is a distorted point, and a huge mistake, not a small mistake. So what choice do you have but to correct this? Because your interest is in fixing, but you're trying to fix at a wrong point. You're trying to fix where, by getting more, manipulating the world to behave according to your wishes are, you'll never get there. And what is your interest? In getting rid of the smallness. But that smallness, how do you get rid of this smallness? How does the little bottle space get rid of the smallness that it is feeling? Just by knowing that I'm not limited, not by fixing out there. Okay, so therefore that is a huge thing that you begin to, otherwise in any lifetime you just take this identity as it is, and what are you doing? Even if you become sattvic person, as Tushar says, what do? You're just kind of spreading your samsara tree, and inherently it is fraught with problem, because it starts with ignorance. Okay, and the effects of that ignorance are what? Bhaya, fear. Okay, then anger, sense of inadequacy, sadness, feeling of helplessness. Natural, because the identity is wrong. It's a huge mistake. Now nothing fundamentally changes, because imagine you have lived how many, according to this samsara tree, how many lives have you lived? Billions and billions and billions of life, right? Now today, are you any wiser as a result of living all those experiences that you have gained? Has it helped you in becoming less angry? Has it helped you? Think about at that scale. Has it made you any wiser? Has it really made you less helpless? continues. So you think that you're gathering these experiences and you are really growing and all, but really if you look at yourself right now, everything is there. So that means 50 million lifetimes, what have they really taught you?
The samsara tree, that it is actually a perception, theory, fact.
Samsara tree is, we've analyzed it a lot. It is your actions and the results.
That I agree, but whatever we are saying is not actually, we don't know it, like.
Okay, so that as I keep saying that there are evidences. First evidence is that anything that you see in this universe, okay, is connected to how many causes? Infinite causes. Okay, now the presence of the tree outside here goes back to what, 50 years or 100 years, or how many causes? You'll come back to what? Infinite causes.
The seed of the tree or the seed of the tree.
The tree and then the tree and the seed. So that means the laws of cause and effect, if it really governs everything in this universe, then for me to assume that my existence is just random, it's not reasonable, because everything around me is following what? Cause and effect relationship, and that relationship doesn't work within what, the time period of 50 years or 100 years. It just what? Infinite cause and effect. Okay, so therefore it has a huge supporting argument, but luckily nowadays you have empirical evidence. People have written books like Many Lives and Many Masters, and this Columbia University's psychiatrist Brian Weiss, he's written and recounting the stories and like what. So that means now you even have, initially what we talked about was all the logical evidence. Okay, now you have empirical evidence by people talking about it. It's become very fashionable to do this past life regression. Not that I care, because I really don't know what. Maybe it does have a limited application, because a lot of people say that, so let's not just totally dismiss it. There are people who tell me that, people benefit, because imagine in this life you have water phobia and you don't know where it is coming from. So sometimes through past life regression, what they do is they say, oh, I drowned in my previous life. So because I drowned in my previous life, then now I'm born with a certain fear. And the minute you understand that, you can kind of, begin to have a proper relationship with it, because otherwise you don't understand why this is happening to me. So maybe there is some kind of a, and then you put everything in perspective. Whatever happens, instead of resentment, instead of self-judgment, you say that there are past causes. So you kind of, take everything, put things in perspective. Okay, and also get rid of some dysfunctional behaviors that you have. So there is some advantage. But if I ask you all these different lives, when I read that book, each one is telling stories. Okay, then I was born in Greece, and then I was born in Egypt as a queen, and then I was as a truck driver in some, and it just goes on and on and on and on. So at that level, right, what really has happened? Just time pass, as Namita is saying, right? Different stories. You've had billions of husbands, you've had billions of children, you've gone through everything.
I have a question.
Yes.
The purpose of taking birth also is to learn the lessons of life.
Yeah.
So hopefully after so many births, you probably are a more evolved person.
So that's what I'm saying. Are we all or more evolved person? Not necessarily. Exactly. Yeah. Because imagine, see, that's the thing. This is exactly what Tushar is saying. We assume that we just go up and up and up,
So you could go
but
up
we
and
don't.
down, up and down, but
Yeah.
ultimately you hopefully would be moving in upward.
So that means the criminal today also has had millions of births, and we also have had millions of births. So what did that criminal, I mean, the equal number of births. Jiva means anadi births.
It's like an evolved person in one birth, like a Swami sitting and doing, could get attracted to some woman and do something wrong.
Absolutely, again go down.
So that
Absolutely.
even if you're evolved, you can
Absolutely.
you can fall into a trap.
Absolutely.
Even another source of our problems.
So we are lucky we are born as women. We don't get trapped. Only go higher and higher.
Exactly. Right. So as Rita is saying, there is no guarantee also that you will only, even if your starting point, that whole Sattva, Rajas and Tamas model that we did, we said you can come with what Sattvic disposition, but doesn't mean that you only go up, you can also go down. Well, exactly.
Most of the time, ego will kill you.
Absolutely.
Even if you're on the right
Because
path for a very long time,
the distortions,
you will take yourself a level higher than everybody else.
and then that is
That
a
will be the
pitfall,
starting point of
your downfall. This is how it is.
It really happens with so many gurus and
Gurus, CEOs, so I mean in every leaders, everywhere you see, in all walks of life.
like if you think of someone like Rajat Gupta, I'm sorry to digress, it really comes to mind because he was doing everything in the right way. Dharma at the ultimate, and like 1 extra 0.
Absolutely. So that happens all the time. And then, maybe you are, and sometimes you are extremely ethical and you are really doing extremely well, but you ignore what? Your family. Then what? Again, there are repercussions. So you see what I mean? You, as a human being, it's fraught with limitation. You can't, even if you want to live a very dharmic life and very evolved life, it's not possible. Totally possible. Relatively, yes.
And when you're saying, I mean, your example of Mahatma Gandhi comes to mind. That when you're saying greater good,
If family
but
gets-
his family,
Yeah.
that is again giving
Again,
him negative karma.
absolutely.
Anyway, he might have done fantastic other stuff.
Absolutely. See, you have to see that. And also that whole thing of, being very tolerant to other minorities and all is very healthy, very good. But if you go extreme and if you don't stand up for yourself, then even today maybe India suffers from effects of that. So that's what I'm saying. You can be extremely evolved, but at the same time, it's not possible not to have Papa in one's life. And the minute you say, I have Papa, then what? There is pleasures and pain, and that grind continues. And, from if this, just, you don't need to think about humanity, just look at your own life. Suppose you have had millions of births. Are you better off today, really speaking, in terms of, if you're really better off, then you should be able to handle situations much better, because all these experiences must have taught you that. Okay, you should be able to handle your anger. In fact, there should not be any anger. There should not be any sadness. There should not be any envy, jealousy. But what has really those 50 million life, what has it fundamentally taught you? Tell me. Really nothing. Until you come to this kind of a knowledge, you just by going through life, you don't necessarily learn anything.
It sends you back ignorant with the hope that you pick up the thread from where you left off if you're lucky.
Exactly. At least here you are starting to figure out what is my life for, and how this whole, because if just without this knowledge, just wanting to live well, it just keeps on bringing you to what? Just the same position, you don't really progress. Now imagine you are given 50 million more lifetime, but without this knowledge. What will essentially change? Will anything change? Nothing will change. Same story. This life it is your mother-in-law, next life it is your sister-in-law, third life it is your husband, fourth life it is your daughter or son, or it just goes on. Okay, that's why there is a need to get out of this tree. Otherwise you'll wonder, why should I get out of this tree? Okay, so how do you get out of this tree? As I said, just becoming sattvic is not an answer, because it keeps you within the tree. Punya keeps you within the tree. Still creates causes for you to undergo what experiences in the future, and nobody can do only punya. Everybody is a mixture of punya and papa, so you also then, along with that will come the challenges. Okay, now how to fell the tree? So as the next verse, which we already saw. Now what was the answer? You tell me what the answer was before I proceed, because I did give the answer. Yeah. By the way, Namrata told me that you are so good at math. So I said, yeah, okay, now I see that he has an extremely logical mind. So there, his daughter was at the retreat and he says, my dad is really good at math. So then
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Just the knowledge that you're going to be in this, I think that allows you to move towards moksha.
Yeah, but how do you then, okay, now you have decided to move towards moksha. So what does it do to fell the tree?
Understand that you're otherwise going to be in this.
Yeah, so what is, exactly, otherwise you're going to be in this tree and you want to get out. So now what do I do for getting out? What is the...
Be observer, like be an observer.
So
you separate yourself from the
from
your role playing.
Excellent.
You become the not the actor, but the
not the doer.
Not the,
excellent.
The knower, not the doer.
Wonderful. Right? As Namrata is saying, what she's saying, you're an observer, but observer itself, where is all the observation taking place?
Mind.
In the mind. Okay, so that means you are still keeping your identity at the level of mind. Okay, as long as you keep the identity at the level of mind, then what happens is, imagine your life is producing situations and you only keep saying, I'm only an observer, and if you don't act, what will happen? What will happen? Will you live your life effectively? No. You need to act. You can't just say, oh, I'm only going to observe from now on. I'm not going to act.
Understanding that you're a conscious.
Excellent. See, understanding that your consciousness is different from one given aspect of the mind, which is where you're an observer. It's a different, please don't, people keep on mixing it up so they never understand Vedanta. Because any observation or knowing or doing, everything takes place where? In the mind. This awareness that Vedanta is talking about is not one of the functions of the mind. It's talking about there is a changing mind which can do all this. It can decide what to do. It can know things. It can have feelings, attitudes, behaviors. It can have all these different things. The mind is the place where all these things take place. So when it talks about, even the fact of this observing takes place in the mind. What we are talking about is another level altogether. Please understand. Okay, what you are talking about is that mind itself is a very, very effective instrument. It can do all this. Okay, but who are you essentially? Are you this instrument, or are you this consciousness because of which what this whole working of this instrument is known? Consciousness. That is not just one individual observer of what is going on. Do you see the difference of what Vedanta is talking about. Because when Vedanta is talking about consciousness, if you keep it only with reference to your mind, what will happen? Again, that space which is limitless, you still keep on thinking what?
That your body mind is developed.
Exactly. And then what happens is, you start imagining, you keep your identity as this space, and then you start imagining that this space is infinite. You see the problem there? When we are talking about all-pervasive space, are we trying to expand this space? Are we? No. The space is already all-pervasive. This seems to be confined. So the consciousness that we are talking about is not just one little function of the mind, which is an observer, knower, doer. When we are talking about that awareness, it is that all-pervasive awareness, because of which not only my mind is observed, what everybody, you are able to observe your mind, you are able to observe your mind, everybody is able to observe things. Okay, so that awareness is something which is what. So I told last time that the good analogy is, there is a Brihadaranyaka Upanishad which uses this analogy to understand what is this conscious chit that Vedanta is talking about. It's not, the most it is talking about that the whole world is what known to you. It's true. The whole world, what does it include? Known to you. You don't know everything, but it is known to you, right? That the time, space, all the objects, they are known to you. Okay. Now, how is it that your presence, which is this body, is known to me? I need what? The light of the sun. Without light of the sun, I will not be able to see anything. Okay. So the whole universe is anubhati. Anubhati means shines after. And what is bhati? What shines? You can say the sun. But the sun itself, if my eyes are closed, can it shine? No. So even the sun is anubhati. What is bhati?
The vision.
The vision is bhati. Now the vision, even if my eyes are open, but if my mind is not there, you can't see. Something is right in front of you, your mind is somewhere else, and you bang into it and you get injured. So even the eyes and the vision is anubhati. What is bhati? The mind. And the mind itself and its various condition itself is what? Anubhati. What is bhati? Consciousness. Awareness. So there is only one thing which is what? Bhati. Everything else is anubhati. Shines after. What happens is, we only see things and we forget the consciousness which enables us to see everything. Are you getting it? It's too tough.
That is why we talk about Mithya.
Exactly. The world is Mithya. As a dependent reality.
And this consciousness is also called Ishvara.
Ishvara we haven't yet. Ishvara we've seen, but Ishvara is slightly different. Ishvara is that intelligence which organizes the whole universe. Okay? So now, let's see. Yeah.
You mentioned about us making the mistake.
Yes.
Within that couple looking at the whole, can you just tell us examples of that?
What?
Which you mentioned that we see ourselves as that bit, and within that we try to become whole. So
Yes.
what are examples of that?
Examples of how you live your life. I mean, the whole life is based on that, right?
So when we try to make that limited, you said.
Yeah, exactly. That's a huge problem, by the way, right? That's such a problem because when now imagine you have listened to Vedanta, you retain your identity as mind, and Vedanta talks about what? The awareness as limitless. Now retaining this identity, you think that this little thing is limitless. What will happen? Disaster. Okay, because people have written books where they then, what is a next step to that? That, oh, I am limitless, so then they try to say, oh, the mind's capacities are limitless. Then what follows from there is, therefore, anything that you think will come true. These are all taking you on a tangent, because what? Anything that you will think will come true?
Or anything that you can do anything.
You can do anything.
And get away with it.
And exactly. Or there are infinite, you can just accomplish everything. No. Can you? So these are the dangers, because it puts you on some kind of a delusory kind of a, and books are written that, yeah, now you are in your situation because you are thinking like this, think differently, think you're limitless, and everything will start happening your way. There's a delusion. Okay, so this is a dangerous thinking. This is why the whole technique of Vedanta is what? Na iti, na iti. When I'm talking about consciousness, I'm not talking about that little mind and its capabilities and that is limitless. What I'm talking about is something else which is always there, which is missed out. If you continue to keep your eye in the mind and then start imagining.
So this is like that book Secrets which everybody read and.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's no one who gets hold of that book and is thinking, why then there's chanting which is the same. I'm not against, I mean, I know lots of people who do it, but that's the same theory, right?
This is exactly. And there it is delusion because first of all, many, in fact there was some research and they said so many people had read this book. This book was published in 2006, 2007, and everybody was in this sense of euphoria, oh, I can do anything in this universe and it's only a matter of changing what I think and all that. And in 2008, 2009, there was this huge global economic and financial crisis. All those people who were feeling this thing, many of them became bankrupt. And there was one book which was even saying that all these Wall Street people had written, they had read this book because it became this world bestseller. So that means when certain dangers were coming, they were still oh yeah, no, I just need to think differently and everything will happen. So that means they were not cautious enough. They didn't take necessary steps. Yeah, and necessary actions. Because they are in this delusionary state of, oh, everything just happens according to,
Such a superficial interpretation of what.
Yeah, but you had no idea when you read that book,
Yeah.
including me.
Yeah.
I'm not anybody else.
I get swayed.
It was like you get swayed and you're propagating it to everyone you meet and everyone is talking about that, and then it was like the second revolutionary book was on that grey.
Oh God.
I mean, that drove the whole world insane. So it was such an opposite.
This is why, even that's the thing, spirituality means what? You have to have a discerning mind. Any idea I present, I can create one whole big thing around this idea and everybody buys this idea. It's amazing.
And probably for some people who implemented and it came true for them, you must have thought, wow. Also that
And then, but soon you will find out it doesn't always get to work.
Some
Like,
people
look at a pearl necklace, visualize it if you want it, you'll get
you'll
it.
get it. So you go to the airport and buy a fake pearl necklace and you think you got it. No, but then for people who it worked maybe they were working towards it and it happened.
No, I didn't it does not mean being randomly motivated. You work everything together.
50% of the population may have achieved.
Exactly. So that means, as Preeti is saying, that you can change your mindset, but you have to work towards that,
Yeah.
right? Because you're not operating, you're not limitless here. Please, that's the big problem. You have to work towards it. Means what? There is an effort involved. And even if you make an effort, it still is within what? Laws of cause and effect. It's not that you get everything. Okay, so therefore we are not talking about this delusory kind of a thing. That's why for a long time these gurus didn't give Vedanta to many people, because what can happen is this: it's dangerous. Then you say, oh, I have limitless knowledge. Hey, I'll ask you one more question. And everything, all your feeling of limitless will all go down. Mind is limited, but it is capable of doing many things. You have to use it judiciously. But that limitlessness, it doesn't belong to mind. Why? The very simple. Your mind is different from my mind, then means my mind is not limitless. Because what your mind limits my mind. Mathematics.
So, actually, if you're propagating the thing that thoughts can make your world, so of course it's good. Like if you have good thoughts, at least you won't be doing. So, by your thoughts, you can make things happen in your life. Then a person who wants to have someone dead or wants some negative thing, someone to go down the drain, so they will start thinking like that. So it should work both ways, no? That if the thoughts can make it good, thoughts can make.
You know what they always tell us in yoga is whenever you have a negative thought and a sankalp, because the mind is not going to differentiate between the you and that person or whatever. So they will just say, there. I'm putting it very simplistic.
No, I don't.
No, in fact, we make a slight difference. Vedanta makes a slight difference, because otherwise what will happen? You'll get obsessed with this whole idea of not having one single negative thought in your life. Now what happens is, if I ask you what is going to be your thought 5 minutes from now, do you know what it is going to be? No. So that means there is a whole flow of mind and you don't have total control over it. So now imagine you take on this responsibility of never having a negative thought. You will be what? Going crazy.
It's not possible.
It's not possible.
You get more.
You will get more. Exactly. Our teacher used to say exactly what Tushar is saying. One person was told not to think about an elephant while eating. Who thinks about elephant while eating? Nobody does, right? But because that person was told, don't think about elephant, every time he sat to eat, what will happen? Oh, I should oh, I should not think about an elephant. So therefore these do's and don'ts we don't have in Vedanta, because it creates complexes. It creates guilt feelings.
This is great, what he said.
Yeah.
To compulsive eating, that will not be exactly.
So the thing is, then what do we say? We differentiate between a passing thought and a deliberate kind of a, when I use my free will to act on that thought, then it becomes an action. A passing thought, right? Somebody did something to me and I felt this person is so mean, and it's gone. You're not responsible.
No, but she was talking about the conscious thought. What she was trying to say was the conscious thought.
So that's why we make a distinction. We say, please don't create a complex around this passing thought, because nobody can avoid these passing thoughts. Almost like instinct. But on that thought, it goes. How long does it last?
I think that Parinam also they say.
No.
I think that's actually a thought that you had a negative.
So that's why a thought backed by free will. Action means there is free will involved. That's why we distinguish. Here there is no free will. You don't know what your next thought is going to be. If you say, now this person is mean, and you stay with that thought, where is what? There is a free will. What should I do now to what, get back to this person? Then it becomes an action. Then you're responsible. It lingers, and you use your free will to strengthen it, and you act on it. That, or even scheme and say, okay, now what should I do next? Even before doing it, you are staying with it, and you are doing what? Building on it. When you build on it, then you are responsible. A passing thought is a fraction of a thing. It just comes and goes. You are not responsible. The minute you begin to see the difference between these two, you will be able to what? Live meaningfully without feeling of guilt. Very important. It's a subtle distinction, but a very important distinction. So that's true, that a thought which is a deliberate thought, and where you are giving it a much more form, and you are what? Strengthening it by your own volition, then you're responsible. Yes, you're. Even before acting, if you're thinking ill of somebody and you're really deliberating on that, then you're responsible. But a passing thought, you're not responsible. Because there is no free will, it just comes and goes. It's almost an instinct.
What happens with bigger thought? Not a very moral thought.
Yeah, so let it go.
No. And you ponder and you enjoy that moment, or whatever you mind. And then you let it go. You might sometimes just dwell on it. I mean, you know what I mean. I know what you think.
These men are like, men are from Mars, exactly. So then you get little, Papa. They're just little. No, just say that one mosquito will bite you. Simple things, right?
But this is a very interesting distinction.
This is an interesting, very important distinction, Namita. Because otherwise you are just kind of wanting to control rest of your thought life. And you don't even know what your thought is going to be 5 minutes from now.
No, but Nima, you had a situation or something with somebody which is not being pleasant.
Yes.
So at that moment, you're not obviously going to think very good thoughts about, say, it's a person or suppose let's take a person. So as you evolve, as you learn, you say, okay, now I've had this with a person, but I want to forgive and forget and whatever. So the thoughts have been maybe not very pleasant or unpleasant about. So then you're trying.
So that means what you're doing is, you are not trying to. See, what you're doing is, you're not trying to avoid the thought, but you're using your free will, right, to understand that situation better, in light of which the impact of that feeling goes away. So that's lovely. You're using your free will not to strengthen that thought, but to bring the counter. Lovely. Very good. That's what I'm saying. You're responsible for that, what you do with that thought, and not the thought itself.
I think when you're saying the Gayatri mantra, are you praying that, okay, I'll get millions of thoughts through the day. Let me dwell on the thoughts which are more positive and not on the more negative. Like let me build on those and not on the other ones.
So what you're asking is for clarity. Because see, first of all, my relationship with the thought itself is not known. I think I'm the thoughts. Secondly, within that thought, which aspect I'm responsible for, and which aspect I'm not responsible for, even there is no clarity. So you need clarity all the way in life. Then if I have to build, then either I can build on that thought, or I can help myself and think the other way. The whole choice is given to me, how I conduct my life. Then even that thought which is there, right, which is meaning well, it may not be followed up by action. So there is so many levels of clarity. It's not just one partial clarity that we are talking about, it's clarity all the way. Okay, so many people have very good intentions, but nothing gets done. It only remains at intentional level. That means that there is no clarity how to translate that, that take it forward. So you need clarity all the way in life. So random thoughts, like in one day you'll have 60,000 thoughts. Now every thought you want to control and say, it has to be like this, you'll go mad. You only choose out of these 60,000 thoughts, how many you actually choose to actively do something about. And you are only responsible for those. Otherwise you don't even know. If I ask you yesterday, what all did you think? Tell me.
Oh God, morning when you woke up, what you think?
Yeah, from morning till now, what all did you think? Or even during this class, write down all the different thoughts that you have thought. It's impossible. It's crazy. So trying to control something over which you have no control, you'll go mad.
But you can slowly control.
But what you can do is you can choose which thoughts to just let go and which thoughts to hold on to. And if you choose to hold on to, either you, exactly, in which manner are you going to hold on to? Either you build or you are going to create a counter picture, a better perspective, which enables you to act differently than this is normal instinct. All these choices you have, and you're responsible for those choices. Yes, that is karma. Right? So this is this whole teaching is not. It's a very nuanced teaching. And it's lovely because it gives a lot of freedom. Also, it's freeing. You don't over-assume responsibilities, but at the same time you take responsibilities at the right places. Okay, so now felling this tree. Now we talked about so many, so many discussions within discussions within discussions. Okay, felling the tree. In this verse, it starts by saying, let's look at this verse, and then we say now, this is just talking about the tree, the literal tree, and then we will move to samsara tree. Okay, so it says, na rupamasyeha tathopalabhyate nanto na chadir na cha sampratishtha ashvattamenam suvirudha moolam asanga shastrena dridena chitva. You know the verse. You know Adhyaya. Okay, wonderful.
We're giving 1,000 rupees and your children to learn.
Really wonderful. This is an amazing. This is an. You got one? Rupa got. Chapter 15, verse 3.
The 15th chapter.
So now I sent you, remember that I sent you this WhatsApp, this tree.
Yeah.
This whole tree, which is like your samsara tree, which is just too many roots going up and down and just well spread and well rooted and all that. Yeah, it was just amazing, right? This is how each jiva is. Roots and roots and roots. How many karmas? Infinite karmas, which can give infinite birth. Now you need to fell this tree. How are you going to do it? It says, asanga shastrena dridena chitva. Chitva means you need to cut it. But what is the weapon with which you will cut it? Okay. Here it says dispassion, but dispassion means dispassionate inquiry into the reality. As long as you take it as real, what will happen? It will continue. You need to think very differently and say how real it is. Begin to look into the tree. Okay, if you begin to look at the tree, you don't need to physically fell it. You begin to look at the tree. What will you find? It says, na rupam asya tathopalabhyate. Okay, you will find the whole tree will disappear. How will this whole tree disappear when you begin to look at it? By knowledge. This whole tree, as I had done 2 times ago, where it went above everybody's head and everybody asked me to repeat it, right? So that means that imagine you're looking at the tree, then I say, what is the tree?
Not the leaf, not the branch, not the trunk.
Excellent, right? Then you say that actually the branch is not the tree, the leaves are not the tree, the trunk is not the tree, the roots are not the tree. So therefore, what is tree? Wonderful. It's a dependent reality, mithya. Tree is mithya, it has a dependent reality and it depends upon all these different parts for its existence. When I take out all these different parts, what remains as tree? Nothing. That's why you call it dependent reality. If you take out the parts, there is nothing remaining, therefore it entirely depends upon all these different parts for its existence. Mithya. It doesn't mean it's false, it doesn't mean it's an illusion, it is just that it has a dependent reality. Then you say, okay, tree is only a name, it actually constitutes of different parts. Then you take one part, which is what? Trunk. What is trunk? Absolutely. You will come to billions of cells. So that means you have one name and then you have what? Many names. One name tree, namni, namani. But actually that is constituting of many different names. Then you take that name, right, which is trunk, and it itself is what? So many different things. So that also has what? Dependent reality. Then how far does it go? To cells, to atoms, to particles. So therefore this everything is what? Just names within names, within names, within names, and it itself forms within forms, within forms, within forms, infinite. At the quantum level, luckily any quantum physicist will tell you there is no tangibility anymore. It's just what? Just there is no real object anymore. You can't even see it under microscope anymore. Okay? So therefore the whole tree disappears. So that means this samsara tree which has spread so vast, right? If you take it, looks so real, it looks so tangible, and as long as you think it is the reality, you are within samsara tree, within this tree. The minute you begin to inquire into the reality of the tree, what will happen? The whole tree becomes mithya, because it is parts within parts within parts, and there is no real, you can't find a building block, the final building block which makes the whole tree to be what it is. Each part is like that. Not only the trunk, if you take the leaves, same story. Branches, same story. Whole thing becomes only a concept. Now, so that means he says that if you look at the tree dispassionately, means you don't get carried away by the appearance, and you look into the truth, you will find out that there is no tree, nacha sampratishtha. It has no real existence. It is only mithya. Okay. Now, if you know it is mithya, okay, now what about samsara, the whole universe? You want to not fell Ashwatha one tree, you want to what? The whole samsara for you, which is what? Coming and going and coming and going, everything. How will you collapse the whole thing?
By understanding
By understanding what?
that everything is ultimately
Excellent.
particles, whatever.
Excellent. Excellent, right? What is true for the tree is true for everything.
It's symbolic.
Tree is symbolic. Any object of the universe you see, as Tushar says, the same story. Atoms, particles, and finally what? Just concept. Your body, same. Right? What is body? Body is a name for many, many different parts. Hands, legs, head, back, front, stomach. Okay? Each, that means body is only a name.
But emotions are fairly real, right?
So that means emotions are also all passing emotions. Tell me how many different emotions you have felt from the time of your birth till now.
They all felt real.
They all felt real, but right now, does any of that emotion is sticking to you? Not really. When you are listening to me, nothing is really, it's not your mind is clouded by those millions of different emotions that you have felt.
Still some emotions still stick.
They stay in your memory. That is within the mind.
Very real now.
Yeah. So it's true, but it's not like you are constantly 24 hours thinking about it. Are you? The very fact that even in your deep sleep you are able to shed those thoughts, what does it mean? That's not your real nature. If it was intrinsic to you, you can never give it up. Right? A salt can never give up its saltness. Sugar can never give up its sugarness.
It's like you felt love for your husband. Suddenly you hate him. About it changed.
Absolutely.
Minute by minute.
Yeah.
You're having like your children.
Yeah, so 1 minute you're angry with them, but you love them, you love them, but 1 minute.
So that means that
so often.
1 minute you're really angry with your kids.
Right, she moved it to children.
Just, yeah. Doesn't she want to slap her children sometimes? Not you, she can't.
Oh, you will be surprised.
You love your children, which is true. That's an emotion which is constant. But you are also angry with your kids. You are also sad because of your kids, right? So that means all these different emotions come and go. They have a certain strength, which is the impact on your mind, right? But eventually, what happens? Otherwise, what will happen is, if you were the thought, every thought that you have thought of will stick to you. So right now, imagine, in fact, it's just a very simple exercise. Okay, I have thought of a tree. Now the next minute I think of a table. Does this tree stick to the table? Imagine what will happen. The third thing is what? Bottle. Then I will have what? Tree, table, water, because every thought is what? My true nature, and it sticks to me. Today, if I am seeing Rupa, how many different images will stick? Imagine, if thoughts were really my nature, they will stick to me. I will not be able to see Rupa, because what? The vision of the table, of the tree, of Namrata, of Namita, it will all what? Be still there, and I will add Rupa. What a confusion it will be. You see logically how you are actually free from every thought. One has more impact than the other, but actually intrinsically you are free. That's why right now when I am seeing Rita, nothing else which I thought earlier interferes with that. Otherwise I won't be able to see you. Your image will be what? Mixed with all the things that I have seen before. What will I see? I'll not see anything. Okay, you are free. But that doesn't mean at the level of mind that some emotions have more impact than the other. That's true. At the level of mind is true, but we are talking about what? That awareness. Free. Okay, the whole, everything collapses. Not only just as a tree, you take body, you take mind. Mind itself collapses. How long does the mind last? Tell me. Exactly. So what is the period of time that we are talking about, and what is the duration of your mind within that flow of time? Insignificant. So even if you feel that you love your kids for rest of your life, that your life, which is 100 years, how big it is, right, in the countless flow of time. It's a dot. Okay, so that means everything is transient, as he says, as Tushar says. You have a question?
That's very helpful. So how do we actually, you explain some of the concepts. So in day-to-day living, how do we bring this into practice? For example, certain things which allow us to be more aware.
See, day to day, there is a lot of discussion in Bhagavad Gita about day-to-day living, right? There is values, amanitvam, madambitvam, karma, yoga, and then all the different sattva, rajas, tamas. These are all for day-to-day living, right? How to actually, all these things that I talked about, which are meant for you to help you to have clarity with reference to seeing this reality of the tree properly. Right now, we are not talking about living my life. Right now, we are talking about what? Seeing the reality as it is.
How do you see that in our day-to-day?
No, for your day-to-day means that if you think that your whole basis of interaction with the world is that I am this limited individual, you need to see that I am not this individual. Right? And the whole tree and the subject, object, the time, space, everything we think is absolutely real. Now what will I see? That it is not as real as what I thought. It is it has that in-between reality. Okay? It is not illusion either. It's not false. Can you say that this is whole just kind of some fantasy? It's not. But that absolute reality that we give to the world and also ourselves as this individual, the whole thing is shaken by this knowledge. Because the giving the absolute reality will strengthen the tree. Questioning the reality of this whole subject, object and the universe, giving it a reality will fell the tree.
Daily life we live within the laws of the dharma, that our dharma that is being created for everyone.
But the daily life, Rita, there have been many verses which are talking about daily life, right?
Yeah.
So don't bring daily life here, So for example, if I'm making you see the reality, right? A scientist is seeing how real is the table and coming to this fact that, okay, it's atoms. So then you ask me, okay, so how do I apply it in daily life? It's reality question. Even to distinguish between there are lots of verses about Bhagavad Gita which do talk about daily life. But there are some verses of the Gita which talk about reality. That reality you just have to say, it's like, now this earth, is it globe or is it flat? Reality question. How does it apply to my life? And right now we are just re-understanding the reality. Then the next question comes is, how does that change the way I live? That's a different question. But if you try to mix all the time, you get nowhere. Okay? You just need to, because there are fundamental errors that we make. Unless we correct those errors, we can't live better. But you need to first look into that and correct those errors. Okay, so therefore,
once you understand the reality, your action will be different.
Yeah, it cannot but be different.
You can't get onto a tree, you will fall down if you jump. So you know the law.
So right now, see, because if you keep on bringing things which are right now not the part of discussion, because imagine when I'm talking about sattva, rajas and tamas, and you keep bringing, awareness is free, where will it get you? You just keep on taking different paths which are not right now the point of discussion, right? And then put it in the wrong place. That's why it requires a lot of understanding to see which part belongs where and how do they all interconnect to create a coherent vision. One you bring here and that you bring here, it will be a mess. You'll never get it. That's why Bhagavad Gita requires time, it requires effort, it requires you to move with that flow and try to see what is being said. Because the whole coherent vision is created and each part fits into that bigger vision.
That was Bama's question.
Yeah. So the question right now is, what is the reality? What is this reality? The whole tree is existing on my taking my individual as real, the world as real, performing actions as real, getting the results as real, and it continues infinitely. There is no end. If I want to get out of this whole thing, doing nice karma is not going to help me. The only way is Asanga Shastra, the inquiry of knowledge, dispassionate inquiry into this knowledge. How real is this whole show? How real is the show? When I look into each character, it collapses. When I look at myself who's acting in the world and gathering all these different experiences with my mind, itself the body itself collapses. The mind which is an instrument, which is able to feel the emotions, which has that cognitive capacity, which has memories, which has what the eye sense, itself, if I look, every thought I look, okay, what is the content? Is it an independent reality or a dependent reality? Thought. Dependent reality. Dependent upon what? No.
Your mind, your subconscious, your experience.
Whatever you're thinking.
What is the question?
See, the thought itself is satyam or mithya? Mithya. Why is it mithya?
It keeps changing.
First, it keeps changing, right? And what is the existence of that? The second thing is, look at its relationship with this awareness. Can thought exist without awareness? Can it? No. But awareness is independent of the thought. So that means that thought itself is mithya. Thought is like the table. Awareness is what? Equivalent to the wood. Awareness pervades the entire thought. Thought is that given form, tree form, table form, picture form, right? But the content of that thought is what? Awareness. Without awareness, there is no possibility of thought. So ultimately, not only all the bodies collapse into awareness, all the minds also collapse into what? Awareness. The time and space within which all objects exist, they also what? Collapse in awareness. How? We saw that the time itself, the way we talk about time, I talked in length, so I'm not going to repeat the whole thing about Einstein's theory of relativity and all that. I've talked a lot. Okay, but here this is a simple method that Upanishads used. 1 hour is what? It's just a name for 60 minutes coming together. 1 minute is only a name for 60 seconds coming together. 1 second is only a name for what? Exactly, nanoseconds, milliseconds, it just goes on. So just as you collapse the whole object, what you also collapse the time and you also collapse the space. We saw that there's a general understanding of space is in terms of distance. Okay, so that finite distance between me and Rita, maybe whatever, and that can be what, that one unit is what divided infinitely. 1 meter is 100 centimeters, 1 centimeter is how many millimeters, so it just goes on. Okay, so the whole thing is collapsed, ultimately only a concept. Units within units within units within units, only a concept. So now the whole universe, all the objects, the time, space, they all collapse, but collapse into what? Awareness. Awareness is the only thing which doesn't collapse. Everything else collapses in it. Brahma Satyam Jagat Mithya. And what is this Brahman? Atma. Ayam Atma is Brahman. Atma, I am that Chit Swarupa. The whole universe collapses in me. The minute you understand that, na rupamasya, this whole jagat which is so frightening to me, where I am so confused, it gives me all these experiences of pleasure and pain and all, imagine. The whole thing is what? An appearance onto what? One thing which is awareness, which is never changing. That is the truth. Okay, how do you understand? That is unfathomable. How do you understand that? The Upanishads use your own dream as an example. Imagine you go to sleep, and when you go to sleep, you become what? You at some point you project the whole universe. This is what? Dream world. You have created what? Dream time, dream space. Then what have you created? Dream mountains, dream people, dream river. And imagine you are dreaming that you are having a coffee in France in a cafe. You've created the street, you have created the buildings, you've created the whole show. Okay, and now you are having coffee and you are having a conversation. Then there is a terrorist in your dream. A terrorist comes, like recently we all saw that how this terrorist came and they started shooting randomly in different. And imagine the terrorist comes and you are really afraid. The whole show is going on where? While it is happening, it seems very real. You can say, how can I deny this fear? There is a terrorist out there and I'm sitting and having nice coffee and I'm really enjoying it. How can you say that it is all just one? While you are dreaming. And while you are in fear, there is a wise person who's imagine sitting with you and in the dream starts saying, hey, this building that you see? Yeah, I see this building very clearly. It can be collapsed. Where can it be collapsed? In your awareness. The cafe and all the different characters that you see, where can it be collapsed? In your awareness. The sun, moon, exactly. The sun, moon, everything. While in dream, the sun, dream sun, dream moon, dream buildings, dream characters, the experiences that those characters give, the emotions that the whole thing is within what? Within your little awareness. Your awareness pervades everything or not? Does it just creates and then it's away from it? No. It pervades the entire dream world, but pervading it, does it become the mountain? Does it become the building? No. Does it become all these different characters? Pervading everything, it is what? free from everything. Why? Because there is a Satya-Mithya relationship. The entire dream world depends upon this awareness. Awareness is what? Independently existing. While the show is going on, is awareness affected? Never. Okay, and when you wake up, what happens to that awareness? Is it kind of imprinted by anything that you have dreamed? Nothing. Clean slate.
Sometimes you get up sweating and
Sometimes you get up sweating because there are some after effects, but then what? You forget, right? So nothing sticks. That is a memory function. True, right? Memory, that's true. But we are talking about this awareness, okay? Itself is what, even if it remains for 5 hours, then eventually it goes. It's not you stick to that dream for rest of your life.
I've got what you're saying about awareness. One question. My awareness of the building collapsing into particles, I can understand. Maybe Tushar being a builder, you might have a little more awareness than this. My child might not have that awareness because her level of intelligence or growth does not allow her to assimilate that awareness.
Yeah, so
doesn't awareness have some dependent reality on the person's ability to understand?
See, awareness doesn't depend upon you. Where is the confusion? Where are we confused? Where? In the mind. Mind has confusion and it can solve that confusion. Awareness, if it was beginning to depend upon, see, way before anybody knew that there are laws of gravity, the laws of gravity were already there. They don't depend upon us knowing or not knowing. Their function doesn't depend upon whether you and I know it or not. Apples were falling what way before we discovered.
You are just ignorant.
Exactly. So if you are ignorant, what you need to do is what? Remove your ignorance. The functioning, it doesn't depend upon you knowing or not knowing.
Whatever state that knowledge comes in, they will understand the difference between body, mind and awareness.
Exactly. And therefore, you have lived lifetimes not knowing what the presence of this awareness. But that has not made any difference to awareness. Awareness is what is. Okay? Your mind is the one which has what? Ignorance. It is confused about what is what. Okay? This knowledge is available as a potential to undo that difference, but you have to choose first of all to expose yourself to this knowledge. And even if initially it may seem very abstract and very unconnected to your life, because the way we think about our life is only with reference to some 5-6 people that we are close to. Okay? So with that kind of a mindset that we have, this whole knowledge seems like what? Totally abstract and totally irrelevant, and you still have to what? Choose to pursue it, because it is a solution to a very fundamental problem that we have, that we don't even understand what exactly is the problem, and begin to expose what ourselves to it, to first understand what is the problem, what are we trying to solve, and why is it important for me to solve it. Everything is contained within the teaching itself. That's why I have to ask you this question. You have to realize, otherwise you don't even know. That is all clarity. We give clarity all the way, because you are only stuck with one given thing in your life and you just are a little confused and you are looking for some answer. You don't come with, I want to solve this whole big puzzle of life, but I need to present and I have to tell you what all is at stake.
Otherwise we'll be keeping on going up and down.
Exactly. Absolutely. I have to make you see all of that, and you need that whole, when I'm presenting the whole thing, it has to resonate with you. So that means you have to have that developed thinking which is able to follow all the arguments and all the logics and the analysis and the, so you need to also cultivate your buddhi to stay with the teaching. Yeah. So that means This is something which is a process. The process of felling the tree is inquiry, dispassionate inquiry into the whole thing. The whole premise of my interaction with the world is topsy-turvy. I'll just finish. Initially and for lifetimes, I think I'm limited individual. I'm dissatisfied. I cannot but be dissatisfied with this identity because it's too insignificant, too small. And my whole interaction with the world is what? Wanting to get some satisfaction for this miserable feeling, the person who is lost. Now, as a result of this knowledge, what have I discovered? I'm not this little limited individual. Who am I? Satchidananda, which is what? Unto which the whole universe collapses. What a difference! Right? Now, if I've really understood this, what is going to be the nature of my interaction with the universe? What is my starting point of interaction? Before it was, starting point was I'm dissatisfied, I'm limited, I lack things, and I engage in the world to fill this void. Now I'm full, but I am with what? For the time being, with what? One given body and mind. So how can I express this fullness and do what I have to do? With ease. Flow, right? In line with dharma, naturally sattvic. Lovely. It's not disengagement. It is what? Engaging in the world out of freedom rather than dissatisfaction. But freedom doesn't make you not interested, it makes you more interested, because there is no dependency on the world to satisfy you. You are already complete. Complete shift. A very subtle but a very significant shift. So that's why it's very essential to get your identity, who you are, right. Because that's the very basis of your interaction. Every action that you choose, whether it depends, it really depends upon who you think you are. Whether you think you're incomplete, insignificant, a person of lack, person who has a void, and you want to engage to fill this, or you think you are free. Which area of your life it will not affect? Tell me. All areas of your life. And it's not some kind of a make-believe thing. It's based on reality. The very thing is, otherwise, you can imagine yourself like in The Secret. Oh, I'm the kind of everything happens according to me. That will get you into a deep trouble because you're not in connection with reality. Here it is all reality based. That's why it's very analytical. Makes you see. You have to be a subtle, refined thinker. Okay, so this is how you fell the tree. Next time I will quote from Mirabai, Narsi Mehta. They all understood this reality in form of poems. They've written this, exactly what this felling the tree. It's given in beautiful poetic language. Same idea. It's there. This is the spiritual heritage of India. It's there. Okay. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.